I want to start today by making you a simple promise. This is not going to be another protein podcast. You know the ones I mean. The ones that tell you to eat more protein, buy more protein, supplement with protein, have a protein shake at breakfast, and a protein bar at lunch, and protein everything, everywhere, until you cannot hear the word protein without your eye twitching slightly. I see you, I feel you, and I promise that is not what today is. Today, I want to take everything you think you know about protein and turn it completely on its head. Because here is what I've learned from losing over 100 pounds in my mid 40s naturally and sustainably, and from coaching the women I work with. Protein is genuinely one of the most important things we can understand as women in midlife. Not because of the marketing, but despite the marketing. And the thing that most people, even people who consider themselves quite health literate, don't know about protein is this. Protein's most important job in your body has almost nothing to do with muscle. Well, not primarily anyway. It goes so much deeper than that, so much more personal, so much more fundamental to every single thing you are and everything your body does. And once you understand that, once you really understand it, you will never look at protein the same way again. By the end of today's episode, I want you to see protein not as a fitness supplement, not as a bodybuilder's tool, not as a gym bro marketing trend, but one of the most fundamental, most critical, most life-sustaining things you can put into your body every single day, with implications that reach from your brain to your bones, to your immune system, to your hormones, to the cells lining your gut that renew themselves every 3 to 5 days. Are you ready? Let's go. Now, before we get into it, I want to personally welcome you to my podcast. I'm Vera Brown, weight loss, health, and fitness coach for women 40 and above who want to lose weight and transform their health naturally and sustainably. After struggling with my weight and health for decades in the corporate world and as an entrepreneur, I lost more than 100 pounds in my mid 40s and have kept it off. No pills, no injections, no procedures, no extremes, no tracking. In my podcast, I share what worked for me, including actionable strategies. I discuss fitness, nutrition, sleep, stress, and mindset to help you achieve your weight loss and health transformation goals. Join me. Now let's get into it. Today, we're talking about protein, but genuinely, not in the way you've heard it talked about before. And I promise you will learn something new today. And my goal is truly that this will not be just another protein podcast episode. Before we go any further, everything I mentioned today is linked in the show notes below. My free nutrition guide, which includes the food standards I use to lose over 100 pounds, my free meditation, my one-to-one coaching details, a wait list from my new cravings tool. Go and grab those after this episode. Now let's go. If you've spent even 5 minutes online in the past few years, you will have been absolutely bombarded by protein content. Protein, protein, protein. It is literally impossible to miss. Walk into any grocery store, any supermarket, you will find entire sections, sometimes whole aisles dedicated to high protein products. High protein yogurts, high protein cereals, high protein bread, high protein pasta, high protein snack bars, high protein drinks, high protein ice cream. Yes, high protein ice cream. I've seen it. You probably have too. And that's the thing with protein. Celebrities are talking about it. Fitness influencers are talking about it. Doctors are talking about it. Nutrition researchers are talking about it. Your neighbor's probably talking about it. And if you're anything like the women I work with, You might be in one of two camps right now. Camp one is completely over it. They're mildly skeptical. They're wondering if protein is just the new low fat or gluten free trend, a marketing trend dressed up as health advice. And you might be remembering that for years, yes, years, the health message was low fat, low fat, low fat. Switch from butter to margarine, everything low fat. Until suddenly it wasn't. And you might be wondering if protein is the exact same thing. Now, Camp 2 is fully on board with the protein thing, but genuinely confused about how much you actually need, where to get it from, and whether you really do need to be drinking chalky, powdery shakes to get the benefit. And I want you to hear this clearly. Both of those positions are completely valid, and both of them deserve a proper, honest answer today. So, let me start with the skepticism. Is the current protein focus legitimate, or is it mostly marketing? And my honest answer is it's both. And I think it's important to say that clearly. Because there is genuine, solid, well researched science behind the importance of adequate protein intake for women, particularly for women in midlife and beyond. The science is real, it is consistent, and it matters in ways that go significantly beyond what the marketing is telling you. But it's important to acknowledge that there is also a food manufacturing reality worth understanding. Protein is relatively inexpensive to add to a product. Adding protein makes a product more marketable, more premium feeling, and easier to charge a higher price for. And the regulations around what you can label high protein are not always as rigorous as consumers might assume. So, when you see a product aggressively marketing itself on protein content, particularly an ultra processed food in a brightly colored package, I would invite you to flip it over, read the full ingredient list, and make your own decision about whether it deserves to be in your shopping basket. So, the protein message is not wrong, but some of the vehicles through which it is being delivered to you is more about profit than nutrition. That's my own personal opinion. And holding both of these true simultaneously, the fact that protein matters enormously, and the fact that some of the marketing around protein is opportunistic, that is actually really important for genuinely making good food decisions. Right. So let's get into what protein actually is. Because I think most of us have a surface level understanding that we heard somewhere at some point that protein builds muscle. And that's about it. And that understanding, as we are about to see, misses almost everything important. Because here is the thing: protein is not fundamentally a muscle building supplement that happens to exist in food. Protein makes up about 20% of the entire human body by mass. After water, protein is the most abundant substance in our bodies. And protein is present in literally every single cell of your body, not just muscle, every single cell. Does that surprise you? It certainly surprised me when I first learned that. So, what does that mean in reality? That means that your organs are made of protein. Your skin is made of protein. Your hair is made of protein. Your nails are made of protein. Your bones contain protein. Your blood contains protein. Your hormones are made of protein. Your enzymes, the molecules that drive every metabolic reaction in your body, they are made of protein. Your immune cells are made of protein. Your neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers your brain uses to communicate, They are made from protein building blocks. An estimated 100,000 different proteins exist within the human body. Let me say that again, 100,000. And all of them require a consistent supply of dietary protein to be built, maintained, and renewed. And here is the mechanism that I think is worth understanding. When you eat protein, whether that's from a piece of salmon or a bowl of lentils or an egg or a handful of pumpkin seeds, your digestive system breaks it down into its component building blocks called amino acids. And those amino acids are then distributed throughout your body to be used to build and maintain everything I just described. Your body needs 20 different amino acids to function properly. Of those 20, 9 are what we call essential. And here, for once, the name actually makes complete sense. Essential amino acids are called essential because your body cannot make them. It cannot synthesize them from other materials. It cannot produce them no matter how well you eat otherwise. If those essential amino acids don't come into your body from food, you don't have them. Full stop. In contrast, the 11 other amino acids are called non essential. Not because they're unimportant, they absolutely are important, but because they're called non essential because your body can synthesize them from other raw materials. So, the non essential amino acids you can get from other sources your body produces. But those 9 essential amino acids must come from what you eat. And here is something I think is genuinely extraordinary. Every single cell in your body is in a constant cycle of building, breaking down, and renewing itself. The protein being used to build and rebuild your body right now came from what you ate recently. So, what you eat is not just fuel, it is literally raw material. It is being incorporated into the physical structure of who you are. And different tissues renew at different rates. The cells lining your intestine completely renew themselves every 3 to 5 days. Your skin replaces itself every month or so. Your red blood cells live for around 120 days. Your muscle proteins are in constant turnover. Even your bones are constantly remodeling. The bone you have today is not the bone you had a decade ago. You are, in a very real and literal sense, constantly being rebuilt. And the quality of the material you are being rebuilt from is directly determined by what you eat. So, be honest. Does that reframe protein a little bit for you? Because it certainly did for me. Okay. This is the part of the episode I am most excited about because this is genuinely the conversation that I believe is almost completely missing from the mainstream protein discussions. And as far as I'm concerned, it is key to understanding why protein is so much more important and so much more interesting than just muscle. Although muscle is absolutely key for true health. If you want to go deeper on the topic of muscle, check out my podcast dedicated to muscle, and I'll promise you'll find it interesting. Link in the show notes below. Now, let me ask you a question. When you think about where protein goes in your body, if you had to guess which tissue or organ uses the most protein, what would you say? Your leg muscles? Your arms? Your glutes? Most people would say muscle. I would have certainly said muscle years ago. Maybe you would too. And to be fair, it is a completely reasonable guess based on what we're taught. Muscle is the thing we associate with protein. It's on every protein marketing campaign. Muscle is what protein's for, right? But here is what the research actually shows. And I want to be careful here and honest. The science of how protein is distributed around the body is genuinely complex. There's not one simple, clean percentage that tells you exactly where everything goes. But what the research does tell us is this: skeletal muscle, all the muscle in your body that you can move voluntarily, is indeed the single largest reservoir of protein in the body. It holds roughly 40% of the total body protein mass. So, yes, muscle is where a huge proportion of your body's protein lives. But, and this is the bit that stopped me in my tracks, that doesn't mean muscle is where most of your dietary protein goes. Because here's the important distinction: skeletal muscle has a relatively slow protein turnover rate. It builds and rebuilds, but not at the quick pace of some other tissues, meaning that it doesn't demand new protein as urgently or as rapidly as you might think. So let's contrast that with the gut. The small intestine is one of the most metabolically active tissues in your entire body. Studies show that your gut and liver together can use somewhere between 20 to 50% of dietary amino acids even before they reach the rest of the body. Because the gut wall regenerates itself completely every 3 to 5 days, it is an extraordinarily demanding consumer of dietary protein. And the liver is even more protein hungry per unit of tissue. The protein turnover rate in the liver is significantly faster than skeletal muscle, in some cases, up to 10 times faster. The liver synthesizes plasma proteins, which transport nutrients, hormones, and drugs through your bloodstream, as well as enzymes, immune factors, and clotting proteins. It is in a constant, rapid state of protein synthesis and renewal. Then there's collagen. This is the one that surprised me the most. Collagen is the most abundant protein in the entire human body, making up about 25 to 30% of all protein in your body. 25 to 30% of everything. Think about that for a minute. Does that surprise you? It surprised me. And you are not alone if it does, because we are almost never we never talk about collagen in the context of dietary protein. We talk about collagen supplements and collagen creams, but the fact that a quarter of all the protein in your body is collagen, that's genuinely new information for most of us. Because collagen is in your skin, it gives its structure, firmness, and the ability to spring back when you pinch it. It is also in your bones. It is what makes bones strong, but also flexible rather than brittle. It is in your tendons and ligaments. It is in the walls of your blood vessels. It is in your cartilage. It is throughout your entire connective tissue system. And collagen is constantly being produced, broken down, and renewed, requiring, you guessed it, a consistent supply of dietary amino acids to do so. Then there are your hormones. Many of your most critical hormones are proteins or made from amino acids: insulin, glucagon, the growth hormone, leptin, which is known as your satiety hormone, ghrelin, which is known as the hunger hormone, all protein based or amino acid derived, all requiring dietary protein to be produced. Then there are the enzymes. Enzymes are protein. Every metabolic reaction in your body is driven by an enzyme: digestion, energy production, detoxification, DNA repair. All of it requires enzymes. All of those enzymes require amino acids to be built and maintained. And then there's your immune system. Antibodies are proteins. The immune cells that protect you from infection are built from amino acids. When you are fighting an illness, your body's demand for dietary protein increases significantly because it needs those amino acids to mount an immune response. And then, and this is the one I want to spend more time on as well, then there's your brain. Now, I want to talk about your brain in this episode because this is the piece that I genuinely believe is the most important and perhaps most underappreciated point about protein. And it's often the most relevant for women in this community who are thinking about their long term health. So let's get into it. Your brain, by weight, is one of the most metabolically demanding organs in your body. It accounts for roughly 20% of your total energy expenditure, despite being only about 2% of your body weight. Your brain is in a constant state of activity, communicating, regulating, building, repairing, and it depends on a steady supply of amino acids to do all of that. Amino acids that come from protein. And here is why many of your most critical brain chemicals, your neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that determine your mood, your energy, your sleep quality, your anxiety levels, your motivation, your focus, your ability to feel pleasure, they are made directly from amino acids that come from dietary protein. Let's go through a few of them just to give you some examples. Serotonin, you might have heard of. Serotonin is often referred to as your mood regulator, your sleep promoter, your well being chemical. It's made from tryptophan, one of the nine essential amino acids. You cannot make serotonin without tryptophan, and you cannot get tryptophan without eating it. Dopamine is another one that so many of us have heard. It's often referred to as your motivation chemical, the one that drives you to pursue your goals, that generates the feeling of reward and accomplishment. Dopamine is made from another essential amino acid. Another critical brain chemical that directly depends on amino acids and protein is GABA. It's known as your brain's primary calming neurotransmitter, the chemical that allows you to feel settled, to switch off, to manage anxiety. It is made from glutamic acid. Noradrenaline, it's a chemical involved in alertness and concentration and your ability to focus. It is made from our friend phenylalanine. How did I do there? Phenylalanine and tyrosine. And that's the thing, your entire emotional and cognitive chemistry depends on the amino acids in the protein you eat. And there is more. Some research suggests that the higher protein intake is associated with slower decline in the hippocampal volume. Let me explain what the hippocampus is just for a moment because it does matter enormously. The hippocampus is a region in your brain that is central to memory formation, to learning, and to emotional regulation. It is also the region that is most vulnerable to age related decline and most damaged in diseases like Alzheimer's. Research, and it's a large study following thousands of people over several years with brain imaging, found that higher dietary protein intake was associated with a significantly slower reduction in the hippocampal volume. In other words, in plain words, eating adequate protein may help protect the very brain structure we most want to preserve as we age. Some observational studies suggest an association between adequate protein intake and reduced cognitive decline in older adults. So, the connection between what you eat and the long term health of your brain is real, documented, and significant. And then there is the gut brain connection because your gut, your enteric nervous system, produces a remarkable 90 to 95% of the body's serotonin. Not in your brain, in your gut. Does that surprise you? It certainly was news to me when I first learned that. And the cells that line your gut, the cells that produce that serotonin, they renew themselves every 3 to 5 days. They need dietary protein consistently, regularly, reliably to do that. So that's the thing that when we talk about protein for brain health, we're not talking about something indirect or theoretical. Instead, we are talking about the literal chemical raw materials from which your mood, your memory, your focus, your resilience, and your protection against cognitive decline are built. Now, be honest, does that land differently than just protein is for muscle? Because it should. It certainly did for me because it is completely different and not often talked about in the mainstream health world. And I genuinely did not know this when I was in my 20s and 30s, trying every diet going, not thinking for a single moment about what protein was doing beyond the gym. And I genuinely think if more women understood this, if the protein conversation was about brain health and cognitive protection and emotional chemistry rather than just muscle tone, the whole protein conversation would feel very different because this is personal. It's not about just aesthetics, it's about who you are and how you feel every single day. And I want to add two more pieces to this picture that I think are genuinely underappreciated that make the this is not just another protein podcast point even more clearly. The first is the immune system piece of it. Now, here's the interesting thing key components of your immune system are built from protein. Antibodies, which are the molecules your immune system produces to identify and neutralize pathogens, they themselves are proteins. The white blood cells that form the front line of your immune defense are built from amino acids. Cytokines, the signaling molecules that coordinate your immune response, many of which are proteins. And here's what this means practically. When you're fighting an infection, your body's demand for dietary protein actually increases significantly. The research shows that protein deficiency directly impairs immune function, reducing antibody production, impairing the activity of immune cells, and slowing recovery from illness. Now, for women in perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause, when the immune system is already navigating a period of change due to declining estrogen, which has direct immune regulatory effects, adequate protein is not a minor consideration. It is foundational. Every time you get sick and wonder why it's taking you so long to recover, it is worth asking whether your body had the amino acid raw materials it needed to mount a proper immune response. Because protein intake is one of the several factors that can influence how effectively your body responds to and recovers from illness. Now, here's another piece that I think is often missing from the protein conversation the skin, hair, and nails piece. Now, I'm going to talk about something that I know resonates with many women in this community because one of the most visible and often distressing changes of midlife is what happens to skin, hair, and nails. The skin loses elasticity, the hair changing texture or thinning, the nails becoming brittle, and most of us have no idea that dietary protein plays a key role in all these things. Remember collagen, our good friend from the earlier discussion? That structural protein that makes up about 25 to 30% of all the protein in your body? Well, skin is one of the major sites of your body where collagen is used. Collagen is what gives skin its structure, its firmness, its elasticity. The process of skin aging, the loss of that elasticity, the formation of lines, the changes in textures, is in significant part the story of collagen breakdown outpacing collagen production. And collagen production relies on amino acids for proper formation. Keratin, the protein that makes up your hair and nails, also requires a consistent supply of amino acids. Hair growth averages about 1 centimeter per month. Fingernails, about 1 centimeter every 100 days. All that growth requires protein. When dietary protein is inadequate, hair and nail growth can be compromised because your body deprioritizes them in favor of more essential needs like immune function and organ maintenance. So, when we talk about the importance of dietary protein for women in midlife, we are talking about skin health and hair health and nail health just as much as muscle. And sometimes, because these are so visible and personal, that actually lands more powerfully than talking about muscle protein synthesis. You are literally building your skin, your hair, and the structure of your face from the protein you eat. That is not a metaphor, that is biology. So, we've established that protein is doing an extraordinary amount of work in your body. Now, let's talk about whether most of us are actually getting enough. Because that is the other thing that you'll hear from all the marketing message online. We're not getting enough protein. Most of us are not getting enough protein. Eat more protein, protein, protein. And that is one of the main questions that the women I work with have. Do I need to get more protein? Well, the honest answer, depending on who you are and based on the research, is it depends. Because large scale national nutritional data tells a nuanced story, and it obviously depends on where in the world you are. In the US, most adults, particularly younger men and younger women, do meet the basic official recommended minimum for protein. On paper, average intakes look broadly adequate by minimum standards. But, and this is the really important point, the official recommended minimum for protein was designed as a threshold to prevent deficiency, not a number to optimize health, not to support the specific needs of women navigating perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopause, not to account for the muscle loss, the cognitive demands, the immune challenges, and the collagen production requirements that we have been discussing. So, older women, particularly those over 65, and some women in midlife with low overall intake, are among the groups most likely to fall short of what may be optimal for protein intake. And women following low calorie diets, women who are vegetarian or vegan without careful planning, and older women with lower overall food intake are the groups at greatest risk for not having adequate protein. And that's the thing. Older women are consistently identified in research data as one of the groups at highest risk of inadequate protein intake. And this is exactly the group for whom adequate protein matters most, because this is the life stage associated with increased vulnerability to muscle loss and broader age related physiological changes. Now, on the question of how much protein you need. I want to be honest here. This is genuinely a contested area in nutrition science. The official minimum is zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. Many researchers suggest that intakes of protein above this official minimum often in the range of 1.0 to 1.6 grams per kilogram, depending on age, activity level, and goals, that may better support muscle preservation and healthy aging. And for women over 65, some research suggests that going higher still to offset age related muscle loss is worth considering. Now, for people carrying significant excess body weight, calculating those protein targets can be a bit more nuanced. Some practitioners use adjusted or reference body weight rather than total current body weight to avoid setting unnecessarily high targets for protein. This is an area where individual context matters. And the reality is, the exact right number for you personally depends on your age, your activity level, your goals, your overall diet, and in your individual physiology. There is no one size fits all answer that is honest. But more than the current official minimum, from a variety of sources distributed throughout the day, this is what the bulk of the research supports from women in this community. That counts more. So it's less about the total number of grams and it's more about the diversity of where you get your protein. Now, here's the thing. Let's go from controversy to controversy. I cannot do a protein episode without aggressing this one key point: animal protein versus plant protein. Because I know many of you have strong feelings. And I want to give you my genuinely honest perspective, which, by the way, is informed by years of being vegan and also being years a vegetarian, but then also now returning to being an omnivore. So I've genuinely lived all sides of this debate. Here is what the science shows as honestly and clearly as I can present it. Animal protein sources, so things like meat, fish, eggs, and dairy, they generally seem to have what is called higher bioavailability. That means that your body can access and use the amino acids from those sources more efficiently. Also, animal sources of protein tend to contain all nine essential amino acids in sufficient proportions. Plant protein sources, things like legumes and lentils and chickpeas, beans, tofu, tempeh, nuts, seeds, whole grains, they absolutely can provide all the amino acids you need. Many plant protein sources contain all essential amino acids, but some provide lower amounts of one or more, which means that variety and deliberate intake across the day is generally important, maybe even more important when it comes to plant protein. My personal view, and I want to be clear, this is my own personal position based on my reading of the research, not a universal prescription, is that actually variety is the single most important thing. Protein from a diverse range of sources, including a meaningful proportion of whole plant protein, is what the broadest evidence base supports for long term health. And it is what I do, not only to lose the weight that I have in my midlife, but also to maintain that weight loss healthily and successfully. And I do want to just take a minute here and say something directly to anyone who is primarily plant based. And again, I was vegan and vegetarian for years, but I do think for the women in this community who are primarily plant based, it does take more deliberate efforts to meet your protein needs on a plant based diet. It's not impossible, it's absolutely achievable, but it is more intentional. And if you're not actively thinking about the variety and the combination of your protein sources across the day, it is easier to fall short. particularly on some of the essential amino acids. And one more thing, and this is something I feel quite strongly about as a former vegan and vegetarian. Some plant based protein products that are marketed as healthy, high protein options can often be highly processed and vary widely in nutritional quality. They can even be classified as ultra processed foods despite the supposed health halo of being made entirely from plant sources. If you turn over those packages and read the back, the ingredients list of some of those vegan burger alternatives and plant based sausages and meat substitute products are extraordinary in their length and complexity. So, just because something is plant based does not make it automatically a good protein source or a healthy choice. So always read the label because real plant proteins, just like lentils or chickpeas or tofu made from actual soybeans, nuts, seed legumes, those are genuinely excellent. Many of the processed imitations are often not. Now, let's move on to another area that lots of the women I work with are quite concerned about when we talk about protein. You know what I mean, the shakes, the powders, the bars. Do you need them? Well, let me address this directly because I know this is something that many of you are wondering. The protein powders, the protein shakes, the protein bars, the supplements that your teenage son swears by. Here is my honest answer from my own lived experience and from coaching the women I work with. It is certainly not necessary. And I say that with genuine authority from my own story. I lost over 100 pounds in midlife. I did not just lose fat, I went through a genuine body recomposition, losing fat and gaining muscle simultaneously in my mid 40s during perimenopause. And I never, not once, used a protein powder, a protein shake, a protein bar, or any protein supplement. Because here is what I think is worth understanding about protein supplements. When you eat a whole food source of protein, so, for example, a piece of fish, a bowl of lentils, an egg, a serving of yogurt, you are getting a complete package. Amino acids, yes, but also vitamins, minerals, fiber, if it's a plant source, healthy fats, if it's oily fish or nuts, phytochemicals, the full, complex, synergistic nutritional package that the whole food provides. In contrast, when you strip all of that down to a protein powder or a protein bar, most of the other good stuff is gone. And you are left with isolated protein, stripped of fiber, stripped of most accompanying nutrients. And often in those situations, other things have been added that you may not want: artificial sweeteners, flavorings, stabilizers, sugars. Some protein bars, if you actually look at the sugar content, are essentially chocolate bars in athletic packaging. Are there circumstances where protein supplements make sense? For people with specific clinical needs, serious injury, surgery recovery, very restricted diets under medical supervision, possibly, and obviously with guidance from a healthcare professional. But for most women who are eating a reasonably varied diet, I believe that whole food protein sources are sufficient, they are more nourishing, and they're considerably more enjoyable. So, my standard for myself and for the women I coach is whole foods first, always. Real food, diverse sources, every meal. Okay, so what does all of this actually look like in practice? Because I want to give you something concrete to take away. The most important thing I want you to take from today is this: Think diversity when it comes to protein, not just quantity. Most of us have been so focused on the number of grams. Am I hitting my target? Am I getting enough? That we've missed the more important question, which is, am I getting adequate protein from a wide enough variety of sources to cover all my amino acid needs? So, when it comes to protein, what does that diversity look like? Well, here's some suggestions for you to consider. Eggs. Eggs is one of the most complete protein sources available. They're bioavailable, affordable, versatile. The amino acid profile of eggs is used as a great standard against which other protein sources are measured. Fish, particularly oily fish. Things like salmon, mackerel, sardines, anchovies, herring, high quality protein combined with omega 3 fatty acids that support brain health and reduce inflammation. Another good source of protein can be meat if you eat it. Leaner cuts are generally more protein dense. Processed red meat, things like sausages and deli meats, they bring a lot of other things along with that protein that are certainly less beneficial. So it is entirely your personal choice, but I normally avoid things like sausages, deli meats, and similar. But I make an occasional exception for artisanal salamis that are made with traditional methods. Another source of protein is dairy, Greek yogurt, skyr, which is an Icelandic style strained yogurt that is extraordinarily high in protein, cottage cheese, and other natural cheeses in moderate amounts. Legumes. These are your lentils, chickpeas, black beans, kidney beans, edamame. These are the most these are among the most highly recommended protein sources because they bring fiber, phytochemicals, and a wonderful range of nutrients alongside the protein. Next, we've got one that surprises lots of people, nuts and seeds. Seeds, such as pumpkin seeds, are particularly high in protein for their size. But all other nuts, almonds, cashews, walnuts, and so forth, they all contribute. Tofu and tempeh, real tofu, made from soybeans and water, and tempeh, which is the fermented soya, are excellent whole food plant protein sources with good amino acid profiles. Another source of proteins is whole grains. Quinoa, in particular, is one of the few plant sources that contains all nine essential amino acids. But other whole grains also contain various proteins. Things like buckwheat and amaranth and oats, even, are worth noting for their protein content relative to other grains. But the second practical point here about protein is this: try to include protein at every meal, not just dinner. Distributing your protein intake throughout the day supports your body's ability to use it effectively. Studies consistently show that spreading protein across meals is more beneficial for muscle maintenance and overall metabolism than concentrating it in just one or two large portions. So, in practical terms, that is the focus: diversity of protein sources, every meal from whole food sources. And that is the protein standard I live by and that underpinned my own health transformation. Now, before I wrap up, I want to speak to specifically to the women for whom protein deserves the most deliberate attention. Because I said earlier that actually most adults broadly meet the minimum protein requirements. That's what the data shows. But there are groups for whom this is genuinely less reliable. And given everything we now know about what protein does for muscle, for brain health, for immune function, for collagen, for hormones, being in one of those groups and not paying attention to protein is a risk not worth taking. Older women, particularly those over 65, that is a category that is shown to be at risk for not getting adequate protein. And the research here is consistent that this group is most likely to underconsume protein relative to what is genuinely optimal. And this is the group for whom the possible consequences of inadequate protein, such as possibly muscle loss, cognitive decline, immune vulnerability, poor recovery from illness, those are most significant. Another group of women who do need to pay attention to their protein requirements, according to the research, is women following vegetarian or vegan diets without careful planning. It is entirely achievable to get adequate sources of protein on a plant based diet, but it does require deliberate focus on variety. Women going through perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause are another category of women that can struggle with getting adequate protein. And this is the thing, the hormonal changes of this transition period increase the rate of muscle loss and may increase protein requirements. This community specifically, and the evidence increasingly is suggesting that higher protein intake during this phase of life can be beneficial. Another category of women is women who are following very low calorie diets. Severely restricting calories almost always means under consuming protein in reality for many of us. And the consequences of under consuming protein, such as muscle loss, slower metabolism, compromised immunity, impaired cognitive function, those compound over time in ways that make lasting health harder to achieve, not easier. If any of those categories I highlighted sound like you, I don't want to call you out. I don't want to confront you. No shame, no judgment. So please, I want you to hear this not as a criticism, but as useful information. Because getting your protein right is not about aesthetics, it's about the quality of life, the health of your brain, the strength of your immune system, and the resilience of your body. And all that deserves your attention. Now, let me bring this all together. Protein, despite all the marketing, despite all the hype, is not just the latest fitness trend. It is not a gym supplement. Instead, it is the structural and functional material from which literally everything in your body is built and rebuilt. It is in your muscle, yes, but also in your skin, your hair, your nails, your bones, your blood vessels, your organs, your immune cells, your hormones, your enzymes, your transmitters. Collagen alone, the structural protein of your skin, bones, tendons, ligaments, and connective tissue, that represents 25 to 30% of all the protein in your entire body. And your mood, your memory, your focus, your anxiety levels, your ability to feel motivated and energized, they depend on the amino acids that come from dietary protein. Your immune system is built from protein. Your skin renews itself from protein. Your brain's critical chemistry is derived from protein. And it's true that actually the data shows that most of us, particularly in the US, are actually broadly meeting the minimum requirements for protein intake. But minimum is not optimal. And the women who are most at risk of genuinely underconsuming protein are precisely the women for whom protein matters most. You do not need supplements. You do not need shakes or bars or powders. You need whole food protein from diverse sources distributed across your meals, eaten with the understanding that every bite is contributing to the literal physical and chemical structure of who you are. So, this is not about just building muscle. This is not about a gym body. Protein is quite literally about the quality of life you want to live now and in the years ahead. And if you want the other food standards I lived by when I lost over 100 pounds in midlife, and an explanation of the standards over rules method that I use that goes far beyond protein, my free nutrition guide is in the show notes. Go and get it. It is generally one of the most useful things I offer for free. You've got this, and I'm so proud of you, and I'm cheering you on every single step of the way. And I will see you in the next episode. And before you go, if today something shifted for you, if you heard something about protein that you genuinely did not know before, please share this episode with one woman in your life who you think needs to hear it. A review on Apple Podcasts takes under 2 minutes and helps more women find the show. I genuinely appreciate every single review. And one more thing. I'm building a dedicated tool designed to help women manage their cravings. I'll reveal more in future episodes, but if cravings are something that you struggle with and may be sabotaging your health and weight loss goals, and you want to be the very first to know when this new tool launches, the link to join the waitlist is in the show notes below. Go sign up now. I genuinely think it's going to be something special. Take care of yourself. You deserve it. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. If you want more real, honest guidance on losing weight and transforming your health sustainably in midlife, you're in the right place. Subscribe here and get my strategies, mindset shifts, and the tools that actually work for women 40 and above. No BS, no quick fixes, just real transformation. Don't forget, you deserve to feel good in your body and life. I believe in you, and I'm cheering you on every step of the way. Have an amazing day. For the obligatory legal disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, nutritionist, therapist, medical professional, or similar. All information shared on this podcast is purely for informational purposes and does not constitute medical advice. It is entirely your personal choice and responsibility as to what information you use. Please consult your own medical professional for any medical advice.